difference, one cup at a time. Teatime. So be sure to grab your tea, grab a seat, and tune in to Miss Liz. Tea time, making a difference, one cup at a time. Tea time, yeah. Tea time.
Well, welcome to everybody. It is Tea Time with Miss Liz. That's right. I am back, and we are back in April. We are starting off a brand new month. So if you haven't gone over to Miss Liz's YouTube channel, run on over, click that little doorbell, and you can watch these Tea Times at any time at your own pace. You can watch 10 minutes, 5 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. You can do all of that on Tea Time with Miss Liz. Today, I am joined with a returning guest from season 1. That's right, all the way back to season 1. That's how good my guests love coming back for Tea Time. And I have Sandi Boucher in the house, and we're going to be talking about reconciliation and relationship culture relationships. We're going to talk about a lot of things. We're going to talk about her books and some updates since she's been on season 1. Before we get started, we're going to do a disclaimer. We're going to do a little bit of bio of Sandi, and then we're going to get Sandi in here and we're going to spill some tea with all of you guys. We are beginning April, so we are dropping Easter eggs. That's right, I have Easter eggs. Last month I had Lucky Charms. This month I have Easter eggs. So let's get started. Disclaimer for Miss Liz's Tea Time live show. Miss Liz myself is going live using StreamYard. Before leaving a comment, please grant StreamYard permission to see your name at StreamYard.com. Please be advised that the content brought forward for any Tea Time show hosted by myself, Miss Liz, is always brought forward in good faith. However, may bring forward dialogues and opinions that are not representative of my platform. The facts and information are perceived to be accurate at the given time of airing. All Tea Time guests and audience participants are responsible for using their good judgment in taking any action that may relate to the discussion. The content brought forward may include discussions for some where they may be emotionally at risk. It is significant to know that this show is engaging in discussion forums only to offer and inspire awareness and connection and is not providing therapeutical advice. If you have any questions about the disclaimer or the panelist discussion, you may freely contact me, Miss Liz, at my email at bookingmissliz@gmail.com. Moving forward, should you choose to voluntarily participate in today's show in any aspect, I myself, Miss Liz, welcomes you. And should you decide that the show is not made for you at this time, I respect those wishes and will see you at a later show at a later date and time. And again, all Tea Time shows are hosted on Thursday, 3 p.m. and 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you see a Tea Time on Monday or Tuesday, it's a returning Tea Time or a surprise Tea Time guest that came and asked Miss Liz if they could come and have some tea with me. So now a little bit on Sandi. Well, who is Sandi? Well, Sandi is an indigenous, what do I have here? Indigenous Canadian reconciliation guide, international speaker, a traditional knowledge keeper, and best-selling book author, and a bunch of other things. We're going to get her in here. She's also the 2016 Thunder Bay Chamber of Commerce Business Person of the Year, 2016 NADF Business Woman of the Year. She's offering a perspective so often denied non-Indigenous Canadians. Sandi Boucher uses animish I'm going to get her to say because I don't want to disrespect the language, teachings, metaphors, stories, cartoons, her infectious humor, and her undeniable wisdom to build understanding of and respect of the Indigenous people she calls family, friends, and colleagues. A proud member of Seine River First Nation in Treaty Number 3 territory in Northern Ontario. Sandi is an international recognized as an engaging speaker, a traditional knowledge keeper, and a best-selling author. She began her speaking career in 2009 with the launch of her first book, Honorary Indian. 4 books later, Sandi and her team are now laser focused on healing both sides of the eagle feather she so often refers to. With thoughts-provoking words, she guides, educates, empowers, and encourages people to actively engage in the reconciliation process. Her audience includes First Nation communities, corporations, small to medium-sized businesses, municipalities, hospitals, school boards, universities, colleges, participants at a countless conference and seminars. Indigenous Canadian Reconciliation Guide. Let me get Sandi in here, and I want her to say that word because I don't want to mess it up. So, Sandy, I'm going to start with that word because I can't say it.
Anishinaabe.
Anishinaabe.
So
Anishinaabe.
let's make it easy for you. In English, it's Ojibwe. I'm
Okay.
Ojibwe.
Okay.
So that word is Ojibwe in Ojibwe. So yeah, awesome.
We're gonna learn a little bit about the language today as well.
Yes, yes,
So
awesome.
so Sandy, I want to go back because in case somebody hasn't seen your first tea time, tell us a little bit who you were as a little girl and who you are now as a grown lady.
Wow, yeah. So I sure didn't see this career coming, but you know what? I was born to do this work. So I was raised very modestly. There was no extra money in our family, that's for sure, but it was filled with love. My mom was an Anishinaabe, so an Ojibwe female, and my dad's French. So, two entirely different cultures that existed together totally in peace. Neither one wanted to change the other. They had different viewpoints, different ways of doing things, and they totally just accepted that about each other. And that's the home I grew up in. I really didn't see why it couldn't be that way. But of course, as I got older and got into my teens and young 20s, as an Indigenous female, I started to realize not every person's like my dad, and not every cross cultural relationship is running as smoothly. And I believe because I had their example, it makes it really easy for me to believe it's possible because I've seen it. And for so many people, they have no example. So that's basically my career. I go in and do a lot of seminars or keynotes and teach groups how to get along with people that have totally different either cultural backgrounds, or maybe they grew up in a different place, whatever the difference is, how to meet in the middle. So that's what I do.
So, Sandy, let's talk about the cultural difference because there's a lot of, there's a lot of misinformation out there.
Huge, huge. And the one thing now, it's slightly different because I'm in Canada. So the legislation that affected Indigenous people in Canada is different from in the States. But one of the misnomers or pieces of misinformation, they believe, I always say there's no such thing as an Indigenous person. And what I mean by that is an Ojibwe person is totally different from Sioux or Cree, or, there's so many different nations, and we get lumped together and people assume we have the same teachings and the same worldview. We don't even have the same language. So it's kind of like the metaphor I always use is think of the countries in Europe, right? That try telling them they're all the same and see how well that goes, right? It's the exact same thing, that the way neither is better or worse. We definitely have to get away from that attitude that mine's a better way of doing it. No, you're just comfortable with yours, and that's totally okay. I'm comfortable with mine. Let's find a way to work together. So that's one of the huge ones. Yeah.
Sandy, I want to get into your tea because I didn't mention it when I opened up today, but you gave me a changing tea, and I want to talk about changing tea because this is how it works, guys. It doesn't have to always be the same, right? We change as individuals, and we said that before we went live, how much we've changed since season one, the two of us. So let's talk about that tea today and get it out there, the understanding of the cultural differences and traditions and languages and all of that. And let's all just come on board and start to accept one another. Let's bring people together. Let's reconcile and understand what that means when we say that. Sandy, share a little bit on that.
Yeah. So, I literally changed my tea like 4 different times. And it's just, and that is such an Ojibwe way of doing things. We definitely ponder things. And that's a term I use a lot. I don't see it a lot in mainstream, but if you tell me something, I'm going to think about that for days, right? Like even, or especially, if you tell me something I don't agree with, or it's a different mindset, rather than dismissing it or calling you some nasty name, I'm going to go off and think about that. I'm going to think about where you're coming from. Like, if I had lived your life, would I have that view as well? Like, it's really coming from a place of trying to accept that this is important to you. One of the rules I always give my audiences is like, so many people want to understand, right? I need to understand why that's important to you. There's a really good chance you will never understand why it's important to me, because that's not your background. But what you have to do is accept it's important to me. In the same way, so one of the big differences is, I always laugh, I have so many clocks in my office and in my home, and I don't listen to any of them. I haven't used an alarm clock in probably 15 years. So in my culture, we believe everything happens when it's meant to. You will wake up when you're rested. You will go to bed when you're tired, right? You eat when you're hungry. It's not governed by the clock. But I have a sign in my office boardroom that says that's my culture. If your culture says you need to be out of here at 2:30, I'm accepting that. I don't need to understand it. I don't need to judge it. I need to accept it's important to you and respect it if I want to work with you. So that's what we're talking about. I find way too many people are stressing themselves right out, trying to understand it. And it's like, no, it doesn't have to be important to you. I just need you to understand it's important to me. Right?
And Sandy, I remember the clocks from season 1. Because we talked about these clocks,
Yeah,
right?
I still don't. And you know what? I love the way they look. I literally have them everywhere. And honestly, the time change just happened. And 2 of them I didn't have to reset because I forgot to the last time. So I was like, well, that shows how often I look at this clock. So, but back to my changing tea. And I'd love to get your opinion on this, Liz. I think, and this is totally just my opinion, but I think as human beings, but especially as women, we are often placed in boxes, or, the labels, the boxes where you need to be this or you need to do this. And I, I tell everyone, I haven't been inside a box in so long, I don't even know what that feels like anymore. And that's why the changing tea is that I don't like. At first I was saying, well, I teach people, right? And I just recently realized, no, what I'm sharing is truth. I'm sharing the Indigenous perspective so that mainstream can see why their efforts haven't been working, not because they didn't try, not because they didn't care, but because of different values, it was never going to work. And then I can help them find a better way that will work, so they're not wasting time and money and effort. So yeah, it was in Canada, we had what was called the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. So it was a huge study of the history between the Canadian government and the Indigenous people that live within Canadian borders, all the legislation that affected us, what agreements were honored and which ones weren't. And they came out with 94, what they called calls to action. So 94 things they believed should be done to advance Indigenous Canadian reconciliation. So that's why I use the word. But often when I go into, I'm standing in front of an audience, I go into whatever venue, I get asked like, well, what is reconciliation? And Liz is going to laugh because she knows me. And we talked about how blunt and direct we are.
Yep.
And I just look at them and it's like, oh, come on. Like, have you ever had a fight with your partner?
Right.
Yes. Did you make up? Well, then you know what reconciliation is. It's just a national scale. The scale is different. Same thing. Acknowledge you did something wrong. Say you're sorry. Promise not to do it again. And then actually don't do it again. That's reconciliation. We're working on those steps on a national basis, right? So,
right.
right? Like, way too many people think, one, that an apology is enough. And my response to them is, go try that with your wife or husband. Let me know how that goes.
Right.
Just apologize and do the same thing again. Let me know.
But Sandy, we live in a society that just says sorry, 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 and just repeats and
Yeah,
repeats and
that's
repeats.
it.
And they're
Which is
repeating
not.
history over and over and over again. And there's no reconciliation. They're not taking the full steps. They're doing step 1 and 2, but they're not doing step 3 and 4. Like,
Exactly.
you know what I mean?
The other thing that we really reinforce, and this is definitely the Indigenous perspective, or, well, I'm not speaking for all of us, but my Indigenous perspective, we need the truth before the reconciliation.
Right.
And we're still very much in the truth stage. We're learning about each other. One of the most exciting changes in my career, like, I don't even know what year was season 1. Do you know?
2020, I believe.
Okay, that was a while ago. Long time ago. Wow. So back then, I was primarily working with First Nations audience. So helping with empowerment, with healing, or, learning how to move past a past that no one wanted, a past that people couldn't forget was the problem. And now I do just as much work with non-Indigenous Canadians who want to understand. Like, I work with the best people because they come out, they want to understand. They want to ask the questions. They needed a safe space to be able to say, I don't understand, without being attacked for it. But we have the best discussions, and then it's up to them how they're going to implement it. But up until now, there hasn't been any training for them. Well, the training was for Indigenous people. You got to learn how to be successful in mainstream. Well, where's the training for the employers so they know how to support us? Like,
Exactly.
that was one side of, right? You're only
well,
doing
why the
half
division,
recipe.
right? There's always that division.
Yeah.
Why can we not work together? Why can we not come together? That's part of reconciliation. It's like a relationship, like you said, a husband and wife.
Yeah.
It's not all the wife gets all the goodies and the man works his butt off, and the wife is like, give me more, more, more. Or the wife works and says to the husband, no, this is all you're going to get. This is not how it works. Like, it's going right back to the truth, Sandy. It's like you said, the truth.
Exactly. Right. And as you well know, as we all know, if you've ever been in any kind of relationship, I don't care if it's parent-child or, adult relationship, if you don't acknowledge what is not working, you're not moving forward. You're just going to be spinning your wheels. You're lying to yourself. You're in denial, whatever the case may be. I create spaces where we can have those uncomfortable conversations, because it is hard to say, I don't understand why that upset you, or, yeah, I did that, I'm sorry, right? Like, vulnerability is really hard for some people. And if we want them to be vulnerable, we better create the safe spaces that allow them to be able to do that. So that's what I do.
Well, and I like that you have that hashtag, I create safe spaces.
Yeah, 100%.
Because we need a safe space to open up.
100%.
It doesn't matter who you are or what culture you are. We need to feel safe in order to open.
Yeah. But that was one of those T's I changed.
Yeah. Well, the T's that you gave me 4 T's, and she gave me 4 T's for each of the letters, the TEA. Yes. And when you did that, Sandy, I was like, yes, she gets it. Yes, finally, I have a guess that understands it.
And here I was on my end thinking, I'm driving Liz insane.
No, I was just like, after 5 years, I finally am getting some guests that understand what the T is. The T is not me giving you guys tea. It's my guests giving you their tea. Why they do what they do. Sandy, what you do and what brings your purpose and why. I can't say, Sandy, you are an incredible person without even knowing you. You know what I mean?
100%.
Those are just words. But if I say, and I get to know you and we get to have this relationship and we build this connection, I can say, you know what? Sandy's an incredible, awesome person. You know what I mean? But we have to get to know each other. We need to know each other's T's. And the T's are within all of us. Every single individual, every single human being that is walking this planet has a damn tea. Yes, I said the word damn because when Sandy sent me these words, I was like, come on, just give me more. Give me more, girl. I know my little tag on my little flyer is only so big, but you know what? We're going to get this out there because we need to. This is my purpose. This is my mission in life, to get everyone's tea out there and for everyone to go and ask your family members, ask your schools, ask your community, what is your tea? What are you bringing to the table? So we can bring the truth to the table, so we can make a difference, so we can come together. And Sandy, your teas were teach, truth, training, and teaching. And I love that you gave me teach and teaching, because there's a difference.
There is a difference. Yeah.
So let's walk through the T, and then we're going to jump into the E, and then the A, and then the books and all of that good stuff, because we got lots of time. We're really just going to pour today.
Well, teach. I mean, that was the job description, right? And I'll own that was me not understanding your T, right? That was me trying to pick 3 letters, right? What in the world? What can I put in here? So
I always get that from everybody. They're like, what? Oh, I like berry tea. I like green tea. I'm just like, no, not that.
Yeah. And then like teaching, okay, now we're active. Now we're doing something, which is what I do. No one accuses me of being quiet, shy in the corner. No one. It takes a full stage to fit my personality. So teaching definitely made more sense. Then we went into training, because like we're not talking PhD. We're not talking the formal education. So I thought, well, that's more training. And then I came upon truth, that it wasn't what I do. It was, what was the message? What do I share, right? Whether I'm teaching it or training them, that's not the important part. It was the fact that it was the truth. The truth they had been denied up until now, right? So how do you fix a problem if you don't know the truth about the problem, right? So that was huge. Then the E, well, I went to empower right away, because hello, that's my life, right? And then it was like, okay, no, we're going to education, right? But then it's like, no, we're not doing the PhD. So engagement, no, engaged. And that, anyone who's ever been to one of my events, it's engaging. It's not just me talking to people. It's, what's your opinion? Do you have a question? Let's talk this through. It's a safe space. You don't understand? I use cartoons, literally. So all good. And then the A, well, I really copped out on this one in the beginning. It's like Aboriginals. We're Indigenous, but she doesn't have an I, so we'll go with Aboriginals. That fits. Or I work with adults. Okay, I could do that. Okay, lame. Then awareness. It's like, okay, wait a minute. Yes, I raise awareness. Now maybe we're getting to something. And then it was, no, that's not it at all. I activate people. I always say the magic happens after I leave the room, when you decide what you're going to do with the information you now know. So truth, engaged, activate. So that's the T.
and I love that you got it finally. And you know what? I love that my guests ask themselves, what is this woman trying to do? Why is she asking us these words, right? And I use those 3 letters because those 3 letters are the hardest letters in the alphabet to express what you do from within.
Yeah. Well, and you know, like I am all about the metaphors. So you and I are on the same page with that one. And the way I looked at it when I finally got it, when the fog cleared, was, and this is so funny. This is actually so synchronicity. But when I do my YouTube videos, I talk about, I envision people coming to sit at my kitchen table. And in Anishinaabe culture, you'd get served tea. So it was, what do I serve to people? If they come to watch my video or listen to a speech, what am I serving them? And that's where that truth came from. That you know, what was this, like engaging them in this conversation and activating them to do something. That's what they receive. So
Well, and that's what I was given at the age of 4. I was given the tea of life, how we treat
Yes.
people, what we bring to the table. And it is going to that table at grandma's house and saying, oh,
Yeah.
what good did you do today? What did you learn in school? Are you getting married? Are you having a baby? We had that conversation. And that's
Yeah.
how we have to bring community together. That's how we have to bring people together, is communicate. We need to understand people. And the only way we can understand people is when they start bringing the truth to the table and they start bringing their real selves.
Yeah. And I think just as important is don't ask them to share if you're going to judge their answer.
Exactly.
Right? Like if you're created the space and they believe that they can be vulnerable there, then don't judge it. And this is where I'm lucky, and I was probably like 4 at the same time, and it was my mom, because every now and then in our day-to-day lives we see people that are making choices that we would never make.
Yep.
And it's pretty easy to go to, why in the world are they doing that? But when my mom used to catch us doing that, she would say, okay, instead of going there, ask yourself, how tired, how overwhelmed, how lonely, how scared would you have to be so that you think that's a good decision to make?
Yeah.
And now you're understanding a little more of their journey, right? It's not, you can't just look at it from your lens and where you're sitting, because that's not where they're sitting. And what I was going to say earlier about the safe spaces, and this was one of those changing teas for me as an Indigenous woman in Canada, finding safe spaces where we can share our truths and share who we are, and even being physically safe, are still very rare, right? So when I started working with non-Indigenous people, it was, and I will own this, because my lens is Indigenous. I look at the world as an Indigenous female. I always will. That's my perspective. But when I started realizing, wait a minute, I recognize this. They're not Indigenous, but they need a safe space too.
Yep.
Like, I know what this fear feels like, and I don't want anyone to feel afraid. So it was really easy for me. No, I know exactly what you need.
Yeah.
Because I needed it before I created it. And that's why I have the career I do now, because safe spaces are rare for everyone, like you said, right? The place where you can truly be yourself and be as blunt as we can be. Right?
Well, and that's the mission of the tea, right? Is when my Oma gave me this, Sandy, at the age of 4, is it was sit, reflect, recharge, and release. We all, as individuals, do this, And when people send me their teas and they're asking me, is that a good tea? I'm like, well, I don't know. Is it your tea? Because I'm not going to judge it. I'm not going to say, no, well, I think you should be picking this word because this is what you do. This is how you, that would mean me being what you just said, telling people who they are when that's not who they are, and not giving them a safe space to open up. Tea time is a safe place. If you want to cry, you want to laugh, you want to throw a joke, you want to curse, you be yourself. I just want real people at this table. I want real difference. And that's why Sandy's back after season 1, because she gets it and she understands it. And it's okay for you to say, Sandy, I didn't get it because I didn't understand. And that's exactly where me and you resonate, is because we don't understand why people do what they do. Why certain people promise us certain things and then go back on their word.
Yeah.
So we have to put ourselves in their shoes and we have to say, oh, well, maybe it's because they're being pushed into it. Maybe they're tired. Maybe they're stressed as well. It's the understanding. And I remember in season 1, Sandy, you talked about the Indigenous people just getting to know that it was okay to speak, just to share their stories, because back in 2020, people were still scared to share their stories.
Yeah. I live in a city that's known for its anti-Indigenous racism, so it's still alive and well. But one of the there are no steadfast rules. People are always looking for the 10 things I can do to work with Indigenous people or other people. And it's like, sorry, we're all different. We all have things that upset us and things that don't. We all wish there were 10 steps we could adopt, but that's not how it works. So what I use are guiding principles. Like here, if you adopt this mindset, it's going to help in all situations. And one of them that I repeat constantly is humility builds bridges, ego burns them. So if someone comes in thinking, well, I know what you need and I know why that's wrong and I know all about your life, that's pure ego. I can't work with that. You don't even want to hear me. You think you already have the answers. But if they come in with, I don't understand, like, why don't they just do this? Or why don't you try that? That's humility. I can work with that any day of the week. So, and I understand in a lot of, especially corporate type environment, you're supposed to show up at that meeting knowing everything and having the answer. That doesn't work when you're building relationships. No one wants to be around the person who thinks they know everything, because there's no room, there's no air left for us. So you know the rule I always use, you know everything about you and your journey and your experiences and even your career, your area of expertise. And so do I. And if we actually come together and I listen and believe you and you listen and believe me, we have both gained from this experience.
Yeah, and we both
Right.
talked about this, behind the scenes and during our lives, where ego takes nobody, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It doesn't move. There's no movement,
No, there's no air, right? Yeah. You can't grow if you think you already know everything, right?
Yeah.
Right. And what a sad existence that is. Like, I actually think it's really neat that I'm coming back this month because my birthday is this month. And for me, that leveling up again, I turned 60 this month. And just thinking back to, I know so much more than I thought I knew at 40. And if I'm blessed to live to 70 or 80, well, I will know so much more then if I focus on I keep growing and learning and don't get lost in the ego of, I just know everything, right?
Yeah. Well, we don't open any doors with ego,
No,
and
not
and,
at
and
all.
you brought something up about corporate. Corporate at the beginning was building relationships.
Yeah.
Now it's just people. It's profit over people. We got to bring back people over profit. We got to start building these relationships again. We got to start fixing the broken. Stop building and building and building. Fix what's broken first before you build.
And the other thing, which, when something's obvious to you, it's kind of hard to believe other people can't see it. And I guess that's ego. So I have to back up the bus when I do that. But anyone knows, like, if you're in business and you build a relationship with a customer rather than just sell them something, they're always going to be there. Now you have a customer for life, not just a one-off sale, right? So even in that corporate structure of worrying about the bottom line, relationships is the way to go.
Yeah.
Right. So when they tried to skip that, well, that's when all the problems start. So,
well, it all comes back to the ship, right? It's what you put in the ship. If you put the ego and you put the currency over people, you're just sinking your own ship. You're not even working to get your ship moving forward, to get to a new destination, to get to a different resonation. And like you mentioned a couple minutes ago, Sandy, 94 things that they came up with.
94 calls to action. Yeah.
How many of those calls of action have they actually worked on?
So the way they were divided, to be fair, they were divided into different sectors. So things we need in the education system, things we need in governance, things we need at the community level. So to certain extents, they've all been touched on. Some, well, no surprise, the easier ones are more complete, right? So, I mean, it's vulnerability is what we need and what we need to create spaces for. And I've met so many people that, because of their past experience, they came by it naturally, that, I mean, there's reasons for it, they don't want to admit, I don't know, or I made a mistake, or I don't understand. And if we can't do that, then how can I help you, right? And now I'm just, because again, blunt, like I just say to my audiences, okay, you don't want to phrase it that way. If you're going to go speak in an Indigenous community, don't say it that way. Here's why. Here's how we interpret it. Here's a better way to say it, because I know what you're trying to say. You're not trying to be nasty, but you're about to get yourself in really big trouble if you use those words. So I'm about to save your butt, right?
Yeah.
And it's like I'm out here trying to save people from themselves, right? Like, don't use that word, right? So, yeah. But I work with the best people. Like I said, my audiences want to learn. They want to work with other people. The really problematic people don't hire me. They're not in my seminars, right? So it's a great journey to be on. So
Absolutely. I had a train of thought, but it slipped over my head. I'm sure it'll come back. But Sandi, I want to get into the books because you've written some
yes.
incredible books and you have some incredible workshops and stuff like that as well. So I want to get those out there and I want people to check you out. So let's start with the first book that started it all.
Yeah, and that one, it's a full circle moment here, talking about truth and vulnerability and safe spaces. So my mom was this absolutely amazing woman. She was not educated, but she was wise. And she understood like human needs and how to communicate with people. And she had just the most amazing stories. And I lost my mom when I was 42, I believe. And almost instantly, like she didn't survive surgery. So she went from being goofing around with the nurses to gone. And it took me out at my knees. I'm her only daughter. We were super close. So at that point, I was terrified that I was going to forget her stories, all these little tips and tricks she had given me. So literally, like if you can just imagine, like frantically typing, trying, and it was part of my grieving process, right? We're just getting her stories out. The first book, which is Honorary Indian, so I'm kind of making the reader an honorary Indian. I'm going to share these teachings with you, even though I don't know who you are. And it's a daily motivational guide. So there's a little story for every single day. And I wrote it. Now, imagine the state I was in, right? Like I'm grieving. This is as raw as it gets. And I put the book out. And almost instantly, that's what people reacted to. That I was not sugarcoating it, that the pain of the grief, like some of the entries talk about, I can't even get out of bed this morning. One of the entries, not to be dramatic or scare any of your audience, but I lost my eldest daughter to SIDS, to crib death. And one of the entries, I described what that morning was like. And I'll never forget it. I had one woman write me after she read the book, and she said, you know what? My best friend lost her child to SIDS. And of course, I would never ask her what she went through. But thanks to your book, I now understand how horrible that was. So people I've had people say it helped them make better decisions, to stay sober, help them with their own grieving. It was huge. But I quickly realized, oh, I forgot that story, and I forgot that teaching, and I forgot that story. I found out mom didn't fit in one book. So the second book, now there's a story behind this. It's all about the title. When I was growing up, because obviously I'm fair, I'm a lot fairer than my brothers. My mom was dark, my dad was fair. Because of the way the world treated Indigenous people, especially in the world my mom grew up in, she used to always tell me, and imagine being a mom having to say this to your child. She would say to me, don't tell people about me. Tell them you're your father's daughter. Don't tell them you're Indigenous, right? She was trying to keep me safe, right? But Hello. I am me.
It's in my blood, Mom.
Right? And I'm proud of my mom, and I'm not hiding anything. So the second book, which finishes the rest of Mama's teachings, is called Her Mother's Daughter, because I'm not hiding anything. Sorry, Mom, but sorry,
It's
not
out
sorry.
there.
Right? Yeah, like sorry, not sorry. So that one, again, the daily motivational guide, but this one is way more empowering. This is more, how do you stay empowered from day to day when you're not in the crisis of the first book? The third book is called The Path. So it is the path to reconciliation. I was sitting back waiting for someone to come up with an action plan. I was hearing a whole bunch of people say, well, yeah, I want to reconcile, but I don't know what to do. So I told them what to do. I wrote a book. and the book is a really easy read. I've had people read it in a day, but then they read it 27 times because it quickly becomes a reference manual. And here's a sneak peek or a behind the scenes. The word path, PATH, is an acronym. And I believe it's the 4 essential tools or sacred tools, whichever you prefer, that you need to use if you want to reconcile with someone. So the P is for patience. You're not solving this by next Tuesday, or even if you want to, maybe the other person doesn't, and you're just going to have to take that time and be okay with that, right? Be patient with yourself. When you get frustrated, step back, give yourself that healing time. You can start again tomorrow. It's okay. You don't need to do it all in one shot, and be patient with them. The A is for awareness, and specifically become aware of what's going on for the other person. This is really important when we're talking about a parent and a teenager. Like, they're just seeing their teenagers not listening, but do you know what kind of social stuff they're dealing with at school and what's going on in their social group? Like, they may have literally bigger issues to be dealing with. So really trying to build that awareness and ask questions to find out. The T is for tenacity. Don't give up. Don't give up. You're going to get frustrated. You might have to give up for 2 days and shut up the phone and everything and just hide and order your comfort food, and it's all good. But come back, because the reconciliation is worth it. And I already touched on the H, humility at every step. Make sure, remember, you know what's going on for you. That doesn't mean you know what they need or what's going on for them. So that's the path. And then the last book, which only came out like 2 years ago, it's called I Am Awake. Before, and Liz, you'd remember this, I was putting out a blog post every single day. I am definitely an author or a writer before a public speaker. I always say it'd be easier for me to give up breathing than writing. I write every day still. It's just I may not release it to the public. It's just how I make sense of my world. But I kept getting these requests from my followers, because up here in Northern Ontario, people go to camp or their cottage or whatever you call it during the summer. There's no internet. And I had people saying, would you please put these in a book? Because when I'm at camp, I want to be able to read my entry in the morning. I can't take you with me. There's no internet. What would you do? Or could you do this? So I took 3 years of blog posts, pulled out the most popular for each day and put it together. And every single entry starts with, I am awake, I am alive. So I'm aware of my surroundings and I'm thankful I'm alive. And now we're going to go into the day. So that's my 4 books.
An awesome books. Check them out. And I like, Sandy, that, writing is important, and we don't need to share everything with the world.
No.
I have tons and tons of journals here, and my kids always joke, Mom, if somebody finds your journals, man, they're going to have a good old laugh. And I'm like, I don't want anybody to find these journals. That's why I'm writing and keeping it private. But I think it's really important that we put it out there that, it doesn't need to be shared with everybody.
Yeah.
Share it with yourself first, so you understand, because sometimes we don't understand why we're being put in these situations, why we're put in this location or meeting this person, right? Because there's a lot of times, Sandy, I'll meet somebody and I'll be like, I don't understand. What am I supposed to do with this? Like, where's this taking me? And it makes you question yourself. So And I love that you said that I am awake,
Yeah.
because we need to be awake.
Yes, yes. And you know what? Like everyone, well, not everyone, but so many people out there, like I was a young mom and then I was a young single mom when my kids were like 2 and 4. I spent a good half of my life exhausted. And I don't do that anymore. I religiously get 7 hours of sleep every single night because I can tell the difference. Like, I want to be alive. I want to enjoy every second of this day and the people I get to engage with. Like, and then I sleep soundly at night because I used up all that energy. And the days when I am tired, oh, it feels so awful. And anyone who's in that state knows that's true. And it's hard if you've got little kids or a really exhausting job. You know, it's hard, but it means you really got to practice self-care, right? Like, you can't keep doing that and keep exhausting yourself.
Right. And we talked about this. Self-care is deeply important, especially as
Huge.
women. We don't take enough time for self-care. uh, and building a business, we have to be aware that we can take a break. We can say, you know what, I'm shutting the doors for a couple of days. I need to recharge myself. And that's what I was taught at the age of 4, was the recharging process.
Yeah.
And I think we both come from Northern Ontario, so we get that we had a lot of storytelling growing up.
Yes.
We had a lot of elders teach us. In today's society, the elders are not teaching anymore.
Oh,
And
they are in my culture, just not in mainstream. I agree.
you
But
know
yeah, we
and,
are.
and and we need those elders to step up. And that's what I mean, like the culture differences, right? Is we grew up with elders teaching us, elders
Yeah,
raising us, elders telling us stories and telling us, don't be so fast to judge.
yeah,
They took that moment to step us back, to look within.
yeah. And you know what? Now, I don't know if this is happening in the US, but if I had to guess, I would say yes. Um, we are seeing, okay, addictions and like the it's an epidemic, right? We're losing like a generation. And what we're starting to see, especially in Indigenous communities, our grandparents are now raising grandkids because for whatever reason, and there's multiple reasons, that middle generation is missing, which is not the way it was meant to be. And our grandparents are exhausted. And I know different communities are looking at different forms of respite care to try to get them support. But through the most horrible circumstances, the elders are now with the kids again,
Exactly.
right? Right. So even though we would never want it to happen that way, it is happening,
Yeah.
right? So there is that exposure again.
Well,
So
it's the full circle, right?
yeah,
The elder and the youth are back together. And this is how
yeah,
we're going to make that difference, is because the elders have the stories
yeah.
to
You know
tell.
what else I've noticed? I don't know. Feel free to tell me if you agree. I would love to know if you do. It's something I'm just real. I think I've always known it, but I'm really seeing it now. Amazingly powerful things happen if you get a room full of women together, like a group of women just sharing and talking. And I'm not talking about a group of complaining people. That's
Yeah.
not. But when we talking about possibilities and what we could do differently and what we need, like, because the women caring about kids and grandkids and future generations, and it's just powerful. Like, I don't get to do those events often, but when I do and come out of it, it's like my head's about to explode because that was so much. We call it good medicine,
Yeah.
right? That was good medicine that fed my soul. I feel it that was good. I needed to hear that. So, yeah.
Well, it's like that awakening, right?
Yes.
When you
Yes.
go and you leave and you're like, wow,
Yeah.
that
And
just
even
impacted me.
and even the sharing of the challenges.
Yep.
There is something incredibly powerful about learning you're not alone. You're not the only one that found that frustrating, or you're not the only one that thinks this is just a ridiculous way of doing things, or whatever it is. And just, yes, thank you. Right?
Yeah.
Now let's talk about what we can do, right? So it's just, I think and again, this is just my personal opinion, and I'm very well aware of the fact that I live in the sanctuary I have built for myself, and my life has dramatically changed from what it used to be. But I think it's just too easy to complain. It's too easy to judge someone else or complain about. And I am just so conscious. I get to live this day once. Am I filling that with negative things or positive things? And that's not a hard question for me. I love my life. I protect my happy like it's my most fragile child. I don't want to be around any negative Nellies. If you're going to be talking about someone else, I'm definitely not hanging out with you because I know who you're talking about when I leave. Right? So
Right?
that's just not going to happen. So I'd rather talk about like, what is your life doing, and what, what did you overcome, and what are you struggling with? And I can share the same, and let's just get real and forget the gossiping and the backstab. Well, that's easy. That's easy. That's someone who doesn't want to look at their own life. Yeah. Right. So, yeah.
Well, it's so easy, Sandi, to put that hate out there, right?
Yes.
It is so
100%.
easy, but it's hard to put the real genuine love out there. It's a lot of people are saying, I love you, I love you, I love you. And they don't even understand the word love themselves.
Yeah. I say it all the time. I say it at the end of every video I do. And what I mean by it is I don't have to know you to love you, because I know Creator made you and he doesn't make junk. So I love the potential of you. I love everything, the wisdom you carry. I love the knowledge you could share if and when you choose to. So that's why I think we need to counterbalance some of that hate with way more love. So,
right. We need to have more of those awakening moments, and I love having conversations like this, Sandi, like we're having today, because it opens up the eyes of the listener. Because even if you're listening to the audio and you're not seeing me and Sandi sitting here, you can understand that we're talking about awakening your souls, awakening the minds, learning and being aware of change. If you want to see change in the world, be that example. Step up and do it. Is it easy for us to do it as women? No. Is it easy for us to do it as men in today's society? No, because we're turning a lot of our men into soft guys. That doesn't mean that their stories don't matter. It just means that we're losing our balance. It's like the elders were removed from us, and the children have disrespect towards the elders because they weren't raised with the elders. You know what I mean? So let's bring back the old storytelling. Let's bring back the old community and relationships and build together, and let's really fix the issues and fix the problems. Get aware of what we're doing. Look in the mirror and say, you know what? Do I like myself today?
Yeah. And that's it. The other thing is talking about judgment, and how we're going to move past that. Judging ourselves is another thing we have to abandon. And that's, again, where I'm so thankful for my mom. I can't remember what we were discussing, but I was commenting on something I had done at a younger age and how stupid it was. Let's get real. And oh my God, did my mom get upset. And I just looked at her like, what did I say? Like, I didn't say anything against you. Why are you upset? And she just looked at me, and I think I was about 38, 39 at the time. And she said, don't you dare judge a 17-year-old Sandi with 38-year-old knowledge. Don't you do that. And I was like, wow. And she said, you did what you thought was best at that age with the wisdom you had at that time. You know way more now, but that's not fair to 17-year-old you. And I meet so many people that are carrying around guilt or shame for something they did in their past. Honey, pull up a chair. We could compare notes. I guarantee you I've done something weirder or stupider or whatever, right? But I mean, shame needs silence to survive.
Yep.
So find the trusted person, admit what happened. I don't know what I thought was going to happen if I admitted my truths. Some big bad boogeyman was going to show up and swallow me up or whatever. And instantly I had the relief, and there was no negative reaction. It was just, what? I wasted all that energy keeping this inside, and now it's just gone. There is nothing like, have videos I made 25 years ago saying things that I definitely don't believe anymore, but I did at the time. And there was nothing like principle based that I changed. I mean, I'm that same person. I've just grown in my wisdom. And we got to give ourselves permission to grow. And it's okay to know more now than yesterday. And it's okay not to agree with whatever you did 10 years ago, right? There's a few people I wouldn't have married.
You and me both.
Just putting it out there, right? So, right? Just saying. But yeah. So,
but that's the thing, right? We have to grow, and we have to be aware and okay that we did all these crazy things, and back in the day we got away with a lot of crazy things because there was no internet, right?
No internet. No one had a camera on their phone. We didn't have phones we were carrying around, so there was no. Unless I tell you the story, you're never going to know it, right? So, and that totally works. that's okay, right? There, you don't need to know. I've always been this wise.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and I think relationships have gotten, this rocky boat because so much is on the internet,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
back in the day, we didn't have the internet, so we did all the crazy things. There's no record of it. Now
Well,
there's
and
records
that's
of all this crazy stuff we're doing, and people are like, I'm going to get you in 5 years. Watch what you say. Like,
yeah. And that's the other thing, especially like in the work I do, reconciliation work. You have to hold enough space for someone to say, I was wrong and I've changed.
Yep.
If we're going to keep crucifying someone for something they did 15 years ago, there is no incentive to change. Right? Why would they if they're always going to have that held against them? So we have to create enough space for genuine change. I don't mean the people that are just saying they have and then continue to do whatever they're doing, but I know I've changed. I hope I never meet a human that hasn't, right? So yeah.
Well, if you haven't,
And
that kind of scares me. I'm kind of like running away. I'm like,
well, and back to your tea analogy here, the change, like when I was struggling with the letters for the tea, it was like I was serving the weakest tea possible, and it was gross and it didn't taste good. And is this what I really want to serve my guests? And that's the same as changing and growing, right? Your tea changes, right? Your tastes change, your likes and dislikes. I just found out allergies change, and like, who knew that? That's another fun
yeah,
thing.
you can have an allergy
older.
when you were a kid, and now when you're an adult, it's gone, and you're like, what? I can eat that now?
Yeah,
Oh, I can
and
have
new
that
ones
now?
show up, and it's like, what the? Yeah. Getting older does have some fun parts to it, let's just say.
Well, Sandy, I really like that you understood the tea because,
Yeah.
it's okay to say, I don't understand. And then when you
Yeah.
kept sending me the words, I was like, yes, she's getting it bit by bit. That teapot is spilling good. We got to make
It's
a mess.
steeping, right?
Right?
It was
And we got to change society because when we hear spill the tea, we think, oh, gossip and drama's coming. Well, you know what? When you come to Miss Liz's house, when you spill the tea, it's good knowledge. You're getting aware that we can change. You can change the way you look at things,
And it's being conscious of what are you sharing with the world? Like, do you really want to add this? Like when those people, like you said, with the ranting and raving and just pulling things out there, like, do we really need to add more negativity to the world? Maybe what you need is a nap or a good walk instead to help you with that, right? Rather than typing on the keyboard. And like, I am so conscious. I don't want to put out anything that could potentially hurt someone. Right? Like if I can share some truth that might help you realize you're not alone, or if I got past it, so can you, then that's what I'm going to do, right? That's what I want to be remembered for. I want to be remembered for serving good tea, not crappy tea. So, yes.
I love that you want good tea, and I am so glad that you came back because it is nice to see your face. And I always encourage all of my guests to come back and have tea. When you ask me, Miss Liz, can I come back? Absolutely. My house is open for you because you're no longer just a guest. You're family.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
We need to build that relationship. I build my family in a different way. My family is my tea time guests, and I encourage all of them to just keep pushing through and moving on. So, Sandy, what's your final message for everybody today?
Be kind to you. My mom used to always say, and it's Anishinaabe teaching, that we have to teach other people how to treat us. And it's not by how we treat them, it's about how they see us treating ourselves. So if we want other people to be kinder to us, they have to see us being kind to ourselves. If you want other people to respect you, you need to respect yourself. And if you want them to listen to your boundaries, well, then you have to. Because I see way too many women putting themselves last and then upset when other people do. And I'm the first to say, honey, you taught them that. Treat yourself as that person of value that you are, and then you're going to find the people that see the same thing.
Well, thank you so much, Sandy. And it was a pleasure having you back. You are welcome back anytime, sweetheart. And
Oh,
I really, really enjoyed this conversation. We will be back at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where Corey Poirier comes in, another Canadian, and he's the speaker guy. So he's going to bring some opportunities and events and all of that good stuff and give you the male's perspective of speaking. Because today is a speaking. My guests are speakers. So today is a speaking platform for. So if you'd like to check out Miss Liz's Tea Time and know more about it, check out the website www.misslizsteatimes.com. For Sandy, if you'd like to check her out, Sandy, if you'd like to give a shout out for your website,
it's just sandiboucher.com. So SANDIBOUCHER.com.
and thank you so much. And thank you to all the listeners and subscribers and supporters of Miss Liz. Without you, I could not do this, and we could not serve real good, strong tea where we spill the tea in a good way. So we bring real life stories and storytelling, and I'll see everybody at 7 p.m. with a second TEA to bring to your table in your home, business, and community. Thank you for joining me today on Tea Time.